Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Build versus Buy, Improving Customer Support Quality with AI Sentiment Analysis, brought to you by TSIA and sponsored by SupportLogic. My name is Vanessa Lucero, and I'll be your moderator for today. I would now like to introduce our presenters today. John Ragsdale, Distinguished Researcher, Vice President, Technology Ecosystems for TSIA. Judith Platz, Chief Customer Officer for SupportLogic, and Geetha Gopalakrishnan, Senior Vice President, Customer Support for Informatica. As with all of our TSIA webinars, we do have a lot of exciting content to cover in the next 45 minutes, so let's jump right in and get started. John, over to you.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. You picked a really good day to join us. We have some amazing guests on today's program. Most of you know Judy Platz. She's a former colleague of mine from TSIA, and she's just one of my favorite people in the world. So thrilled to have Judy here with us. And I think that everyone within TSIA is a little exhausted with me constantly talking about how Informatica is our most progressive pace-setting member. And I have so much respect for Geetha and her organization, and I'm thrilled that she is here today to talk about some of the really cool stuff that Informatica has been able to do. So when we think about the topic of artificial intelligence, going back a decade, this was really in the domain of very large companies that usually had some sort of data science core competency. They had a large team of data scientists at their disposal. They were building everything themselves. But fast forward to today, there is an amazing quantity of off-the-shelf, very advanced AI, Gen AI capabilities available today. And I still see that a lot of companies are stuck in that build your own mentality. And as good as you are, you're going to start losing competitive advantage to a lot smaller, more nimble companies who are really quickly consuming some of these new capabilities that providers such as SupportLogic are bringing to market. So we're going to dive into that build versus buy discussion. And though AI is obviously a big topic across the entire enterprise, it's really focused primarily today where we see people doing the most investing and getting the most use cases, and the early ROI stories are in services and specifically support. And in my very long career covering support technology, this is one of the rare times that we see support really leading the fight on cool new technology across the enterprise. And we're going to talk more about that in just a minute. But this is a survey we did across our membership areas asking, where do you see the biggest initial impact of AI capabilities? And 63% of our members said service delivery, and specifically support. And it's because of that incredible volume of interactions that support is faced with. There's a lot of repetitive work that's going on with common problems that everybody is struggling with. So it really is a great place to start. And our data shows that the support is definitely ahead of other departments. But one of the things that we see that is really determining if companies are going to be a pace setter with their use of AI, or if they're kind of hanging back and being a laggard, is if you have a sense of a cross-enterprise focus on this topic. And these are a couple of different data points from a poll we did on organizing for AI success. And we tend to see the companies that are far out ahead with really interesting use cases for various AI technologies tend to have a C-level executive that is driving this initiative, creating the strategy. They've got a centralized data science organization that's helping every organization across the enterprise figure out the best use cases they should be automating or gaining insights with AI. And there also is a formal process for sharing lessons learned across the entire enterprise. And again, this is an amazing opportunity for support because they are really central in starting a lot of the Gen AI development, some of the more advanced AI capabilities like sentiment analysis that we're talking about today. It makes total sense to start in support, but it is so applicable to the success organization, the sales organization, really any customer-facing organization. And another aspect of this cross-enterprise is, of course, budget. And a couple of kind of differing data sets here. When we ask our support members who is funding Gen AI initiatives, 33% say it's coming specifically from support, but over half say it's either a cross-business unit or a corporate-wide budget that is funding this. But in another survey, AI and revenue growth, which is focused on sales and the CRO role, they're saying that only 18% is coming within the sales or marketing budget, only 20% have a cross-functional AI initiative, and the majority say they don't have a budget really at all today. So again, I think that support is very lucky that they were kind of out in front and building those use cases early. And Judy, I'd love to get your input on this. You're talking to so many companies about the potential for AI. How critical is having this kind of enterprise view to the success of getting the funding, getting the resources, and ultimately having successful AI?
Yeah, thank you, John. And it's great to be here with you today, and Geetha, you as well. John, I feel like, and I've said this so many times, support is having its day in the sun right now. And I said that because, frankly, of COVID and everything that support did. And here we're on the second chapter of the day in the sun, which is AI. Because support, can launch so many initiatives, making them really in the company forward thinkers. And we've seen that over the years with so many support organizations. And now that these other organizations are looking at the success and looking at the things that can happen, it does make sense to have this cross-enterprise view. I would say at SupportLogic, we did start as the support experience platform, but we're having more and more conversations today with CIOs and CTOs, heads of engineering, heads of customer success and sales, because frankly, and good for support orgs, they're producing these amazing results and people are taking note of those results and saying, hey, we need to do that across the enterprise. So I love to see this data. I love to see that support, again, is leading on this effort. We knew it was possible. And now I think AI is really helping the support leaders and the management teams validate what we've known all along, that support can really be a leader in a lot of companies.
Yeah, it's great to see support really emerging with more visibility and influence. They got a seat at the table for these strategic roadmap discussions, and that wasn't happening 5 years ago. So right. It's fantastic to see. So when we look at where people are really investing in AI, the primary areas are around customer experience. So not only the Gen AI part of creating great content for customers, whether it's learning content or knowledge management content, but getting account insight, some idea around account health, predicting churn analysis, looking at sentiment analysis, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. So Judy, is this what you are saying? Because SupportLogic is really all over those categories.
Absolutely. Absolutely, John. When we started, and this, you were the one who introduced me to Krishna many years ago. And we started in that, predictive space, the sentiment analysis space. But now again, we're seeing with reductions in force that are occurring, let's say with customer success teams or even with sales teams, the insights that are there, that are sitting in, these millions and millions of pieces of data that support sits on, that needs to get brought out and put in front of other account-facing teams and product teams, of course. And now with Gen AI and things like case summarization that can be automatically turned into knowledge articles that are published either internally, externally, or both, the fact that all of this data now, again, through AI can be used So, it's part of the reason I came over here to SupportLogic, because I still believe SupportLogic, is an amazing company changing the face of support. But by touching each of these areas that we see here, every support organization, if they're not thinking about it, should be, because again, time in the sun. And if you can do these things and prove your value to the rest of the company, I think you change the entire culture of your support org. And that's so very important after years of, as you and I know, John, kind of these, sad and woeful support organizations. Now they can really be the org that they've known they can be. And again, Geetha and team, we've said it for years about Informatica. They're there and, they're touching, each one of these bars. And I think that's fantastic.
Well, in a cloud world, the reason that we're so focused on AI for customers' experience is because more companies are truly understanding that customer experience is driving annual recurring revenue, or ARR. And this survey question asked about revenue metrics that companies are able to impact with AI. And number one, over 30 companies reducing churn, improving renewal rates. I mean, that's really what it's about, is understanding what is going on in the customer experience. It's creating friction points that are causing problems when it comes time for renewal, or what is creating such an amazing experience that the renewal is automated and there's no questions asked. But I think the challenge is when we dig into our companies doing the math to understand what specifically for their environment is happening in the customer experience that is impacting positively or negative annual recurring revenue. And we've shown a lot of TSIA data that the higher the support satisfaction, the higher the renewal, the higher the NPS score. But you've got to really dig in and understand in your particular customer journey what is working and not working. And companies are not doing that on their own. And that's why a product like SupportLogic is so key, because that's exactly what you're doing, right?
It absolutely is, John. And we're not waiting, 2 weeks until a case closes to find out if the customer was happy or not. We're able to predict days, sometimes weeks before a customer ever thinks about triggering an escalation. We can look at the case and detect sentiment and feed that back immediately to customer success, again, sales teams, services teams that might be involved. And, feeding that back not only to management or leadership, but to the actual agent who's working the case, who may be so busy into the technical motion, but feeding sentiment back to them real time to say that the customer's, not pleased, the customer tone's not correct, all of these different things that you can bring to bear. This is where it's at, because we know survey response rates, I don't know my data the way I used to, John, but maybe 7 to 9% response rate. That's not enough to tell you. And trending down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're doing it without a multi-million-dollar budget and a huge team of data scientists. And that's the other key, is technology that's really accessible to any technology company of any size. And that's really what is changing the equation here. So that is enough for me. I'd like to turn things over now to you, Judy, and can't wait to hear what Geetha is going to share with us today. So over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. And, Geetha and I are going to do a little bit of a fireside chat and, share her experience and really get into the mind of Informatica a bit, which I know people always love to do when Informatica's on stage at the TSIA events, or, winning many of their awards where we get to read about their stories. So, for us, it is beyond ARR. AI is in fact changing the impact that support has. We always knew that. We knew that satisfied customers would renew. We knew that satisfied customers would probably be advocates for your company and such. But when we really look at things like net dollar retention, margins, the customer lifetime value, and of course the rule of 40, that's the sum of your margin and your growth rate should be greater than 40. Everything on that bottom line with those arrows is pointing in the right direction. Agent productivity is up. Customer attrition is down. escalations are down. Time spent with promoters, those companies and those customers that you know will be advocates for you, whether it's with other customers or prospects or in the social arenas. You know, the days of considering escalations just a part of life, those days are over. We don't have to have escalations as a standard course of business anymore. You know, just yesterday, John, I was doing a search on something, and I told somebody this. I do it every Monday morning. Every Monday morning, I go out onto Google and I search for escalation manager job openings just to see how many are there. And it's absolutely amazing to me how many escalation manager job openings we still have. We don't need to have that, right? We can avoid the escalations. We can take that head count and turn that headcount into spending time with promoters versus spending time with people who are so unhappy, right? It might be a case, it might be a customer escalation, it might be a business escalation. So, you know, I think, you know, if we haven't changed our view of escalations, we really need to. Now is the time. But things like sales efficiency improvements, you know, the revenue churn going down, revenue growth going up, that's a natural, and margins going up. And, you know, if support can impact all of these metrics, and by the way, shameless plug here for something, if you haven't looked at your support metrics in a while, I think it's time to do that. Because if I am sitting in a chair and I'm responsible for support, I'm going to start reporting on my impact to these metrics. Don't get me wrong. I know time to respond, time to resolve, all of these other metrics that we've measured for years and years and years. There's value, right, to measuring and improving. But these metrics here and tying your support story to these metrics, again, I think you change everything about your story when it comes to your executives and how other business leaders in your company are viewing the contribution of support. So for us at SupportLogic, of course, you know, we know that companies who are using AI are growing and protecting that revenue. But I think the only way you can do that is by understanding and acting on the unbiased signals that you have from every customer interaction. And I think from what we have known for so long with support organizations is we have all of this data in our case history, and we take those cases, we work those cases, and we're thrilled when we can quickly resolve cases and move on to the next issue and create hopefully a happy customer. But I think at the end of the day, if we can take that data and give that to other organizations quickly, efficiently, and with data and insights attached, we can actually influence, you know, the product roadmap. We can influence the ICP potential. Are we looking at the right customers? Do we have, you know, the right focus on our marketing efforts? And it just doesn't end where all of that insight and data can be applied. So again, you know, I thought I'd be old enough in my career now that I'd be not as excited about support, but I'm so excited about support and what's happening in our industry. And I hope everyone else is feeling that same thing. So Geetha, I'm going to bring you in now because we're going to talk about the Informatica story. And I've been blessed, and John's been blessed to know your team for so many years. And we have watched you, you know, absolutely, you know, go through this transformation. And for you, you are the absolute epitome of there is no end to transformation. There was a start, but there's no clear end because you're just going to keep doing and keep improving. And so we were lucky enough to bring you to the SupportLogic customer family, and we're very thrilled about that. But you were looking for a way to scale, but also complement something that you had built in-house and was an award-winning tool. I know you were because I got to judge and vote on, you know, your contributions there. And you wanted something that you could pull together, bring together, you know, not necessarily replace what you had, but of course, you know, dovetail in. And you shared with us, you know, the journey that you went on with our tool and the improvements you are, you know, willing to publicly say 18% reduction in escalations, an 8% reduction in requests for attention to your cases. So that ping that we're all used to. Hey, can I get an update here, right? And 8% reduction in cases that had just gone what we call stale, right? There was just inactivity either with the customer side or with the support side, but either way, they had become stale cases. So Geetha, thank you so much for joining. And are you ready for us to ask a few questions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Judy and John, for having me in this conversation.
Our pleasure, without a doubt. So how about we start a little bit with, at Informatica, every part of your business, right, it was aligning with the shift to cloud-only consumption. Can you talk to us about the key considerations that you took during that process, from a support perspective?
So Informatica, our cloud transformation started a few years ago, right? And AI projects are not something new for us. We have been doing it for several years. In fact, in Informatica, I think we were the first organization to have a data science team back in 2016, right? So we already thought there was a need for it because, as you said, Judy, we have wealth of data with us, right, through cases, right? So we already started off with predictive escalations way back then, right? And since then on, as we were going more into cloud, we realized customers look for something different and faster, quicker, and at the right time, right? So we realized that we had to do things much faster than what we used to do before. So we started building a lot of things within ours, so like including when customer creates a case, prompt them and have a case description score so customer can actually see, have they give us all the needed information for a support engineer to be able to troubleshoot the problem from that point instead of going back and forth and asking for information, right? So we put things around that to where we are fast forward several years now. We are in Gen AI, like you talked about, Judy. We are talking about how can you even generate a case closing note so engineers don't have to worry about that, and that automatically creates a knowledge base article, right? So definitely some of the key consideration as we went through this journey was customers are looking for something different in cloud, which has to be faster, on time. So that was what we have been focusing on, and to see how to do things more proactively. And one of the things we hear a lot now in support world is shift left, right? How do you do things much early on so you don't have to wait for cases to come later?
Absolutely. Shifting left is very, very important. And we're trying to get that word deflection away, right? It's not about deflecting the customer. It is potentially about deflecting the case, but doing that through digital assets that the customer can use that you are still making available to them, which I think is so important. So we know each other, and John and things through our TSIA time, but for you to actually look at SupportLogic and create a partnership with us, what did you consider when you were thinking about how to dovetail what you already had and bring a tool like ours in? What were the main considerations, and what did you think that we were bringing to you that you didn't already have?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, Judy, so we had a lot of tools and AI capabilities we built for engineers, right, to make their day in, day out job much easier. One of the things that won TSIA award was our whole SALT, right, which we call a severity at every leaps and turns, which is they see a dashboard which kind of looks like a different widgets, and where engineers know which is the first case they need to focus on first, right, when their day starts, right? So when we realized all these things we had built from an engineer perspective, right? But what we realized is in the cloud world, we need to look at things more proactively. Like you said, how do you deflect even escalations? I mean, you need to understand customer sentiment, right? So you wanted to see what is it that managers would need to do their day-to-day job, right? And typically, if you look at a manager, they might have 10 to 12 engineers each. Even if they have 10 to 15 cases, you're looking at 150 cases that they're parsing day to day, right? And how do they pick something? It's like a needle in a haystack, right? How do you find out what is really the problem in there and which case needs attention from them, not necessarily from an engineer point of view? So that is when we were actually trying to see, is that something we need to build ourselves, because we have built a lot of AI things in here, but as opposed to going and finding somebody who's already built it, because we are running time was of essence as well. Being in the cloud world, we want to do things much faster. We didn't want to be left behind. So that's when we explored SupportLogic, and not only did it complement what we had, it also already had the capabilities of how do you deal with compliance and security related. So it was very seamless for us to embed it within this ecosystem that we already had. So definitely that was one of the key things we are looking into, where it has to be complementing something we had as opposed to something totally new somebody has to learn.
Absolutely. Thank you for considering us and for choosing us. It matters. Thank you. So I want to talk about that because you touched on a lot of the tooling and such being for the engineers, which, by the way, congrats to you. I think a lot of organizations, I talked about this before in a webinar that I did with John. We kind of over-rotated to looking at everything through the customer experience. And then we swung that pendulum back and said, wait a minute, let's look through the employee. And I think a lot of organizations, still don't look at it enough through the employee lens. So, congrats to you for doing that. But let's take it back to the customer lens for a moment. We said just a little bit ago, we talked about surveys and the voice of the customer, needing to be, a main voice there when you talk about investing in AI. What did you find, when you identified, looking at it through, more of the customer lens as well, the voice of the customer? And by the way, it's not lost on anyone. You've won awards every year for many years for, and based upon your customer satisfaction, and right, if I'm not mistaken, JD Power Awards, right? And
Absolutely.
Really, yeah. So let's talk just a bit about that voice of the customer. And it is important. Surveys are important. I don't mean to reduce their importance, but how did what we were bringing to you and what SupportLogic brought to you from a voice of the customer, talk about how that came together with what you already were doing.
Yeah. So as you said, right, we also have surveys that go, transaction surveys that go out, and we have 15% who respond to our surveys. And I mean, as Informatica being one of the top service organization, we get, I would say 90% of our surveys are rated 4 and 5, which are the highest ratings you can get, right? So when we looked at SupportLogic, our goal was not to see, okay, do we need to improve our CSAT? That was not the goal we were going after. It's like, how do you look as an Informatica? How do you look at all the different information you're gathering about customers, and support being one of the key teams where all the interactions happen, most of the interactions happen, right? And it's like each interaction is very impactful and it makes a huge impression on the customer, right? So it was very imperative that support organization is where most of the feedback is coming through, even though you have surveys that marketing might do or a customer success organization might do. So it was clear that, okay, there are other signals that we are getting from customer, not just the survey that you send at the end of the case, right? So we want to bridge all those things and say, what are the customers saying as during the life cycle of a case? How can we course correct or do things differently to get the customer the resolution that they want sooner, right? So that is where I think SupportLogic played a significant role for our managers to say, what are the sentiments that are happening, even as the customer converses through your case, through emails. There are a lot of sentiments that are built in there actually, right? Which was very difficult to parse earlier. As I mentioned, it was like finding a needle in a haystack, so it was not easy to find that information. But now with SupportLogic, we are able to see that much sooner. The managers are finding it very useful. So their lives have become much easier on a day-to-day basis to identify those things where they need to make a difference, right? And they provide the needed guidance for the engineers. In a way, it has also become like a coaching tool for the manager with their engineers, right? To see, okay, maybe the engineer is struggling this kind of things, or maybe this is a soft skill that I need to coach my engineer more on, right? So they are not only using it for their day-to-day operations, but using it also a means of how do I coach my engineer to make sure the sentiments are always in the positive direction.
I love the coaching aspect that you're bringing into this, because I have to think that with that 18% reduction in escalations, I was just talking to somebody earlier on a webinar, and they were talking about the suffer score, right? That we have. And, the fact that you can take those off the manager's backs, it frees them up to have more time doing what it is they want to do, which is to guide and coach their engineers and spend more meaningful, hours in the day as opposed to more of that, always having to go through an escalation and suffer through it, if you will, right? But that's just one of the metrics that we talk about, with introducing AI tools into your support organization. Have you found that you have new KPIs that you're looking at? Impact to KPIs. Let's talk about that for a minute. No webinar about support cannot have a conversation about metrics and KPIs.
Right. So I think as we go into this new, Gen AI is a disruptor, right? So definitely there'll be a lot of things, not only what you can enhance what you already have, but also look at areas which we never thought was doable, right? So which means that opens up a lot of opportunities for us. So we came up with 3 key drivers that are going to underpin whatever initiatives that we do around Gen AI, right? One is the growth accelerators, which is not just looking from a case, but as a company, how are you going to use Gen AI to increase growth potential, whether it's upsell, expansion, how do you do that, right? Or how do you even qualify the opportunities and leads, right? So that is one area. The other thing is, of course, the well-known thing about how do you improve efficiency and productivity, right, of everybody who's working in this customer success organization. And last but not the least, how do you do customer service at scale, right? Because as you go into cloud, we have a lot of customers, a lot of similar questions, similar things. And in the cloud world, you have constant releases that are happening. So how do you proactively get information out to them? When they are going through a release cycle, how do you educate them? What are things happening, right? So you really have to look at things that can be done at scale, right? So these were the key drivers that we embark on with our Gen AI initiatives right now. And for any initiative we look into, we are trying to say, okay, what are those things we need to do? That is it going to help with this, the growth accelerator, or is it going to help with the efficiency and productivity, or is it going to help in improving customer experience through scale, right? So we are any initiative now we are going to look at these key drivers and see which one is it going to impact, and is that impact going to be huge, and is that the project we need to embark on? So those are some of the key things we have started doing since last year.
That's awesome. I love those. And I struggle with this myself sometimes with some of our customers when they really want to look at, the hard impact that a Gen AI tool can have, right? And there's nothing that you can measure when you start to talk about the stress footprint and taking that off of people. It's a feeling, it's an attitude, it's the fact that people feel lighter and look lighter when they're in business meetings with you and such, right? And knowing, you can't touch a metric on that. It's wrapped around so many others, but just knowing that you're doing something to make tomorrow a better day for the managers, for the employees, for the customers. I think it's so meaningful to have the different view of metrics and understand how tools like this can really improve everything that you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about choosing us. And I know I was a customer of SupportLogic before I started my employment journey here. And software companies don't often want to buy software. So you had to go through something. And I think a lot of organizations, still, they do struggle, the buying cycle, especially for support, because most of support's budget, and John, I don't know, maybe you have a metric on this. It used to be about 89%, I think, of the budget was people. Does that seem about right from the studies that are still out there, John?
Yeah, and with the cost of resources going up, that number is not going to be shrinking anytime soon.
Right. So let's talk about how it worked for Informatica, and when you went into a decision cycle and started to look at other software and vendors. What lessons did you learn? And by the way, if you learned a lesson about us through the sales cycle, Geetha, don't be shy about sharing that. Full transparency. But tell us a little bit about what you learned, because right now you can throw a stone and hit 10 AI companies, right? There's hundreds and hundreds, and I think they're popping up every day. So tell us a little bit about that experience and that journey.
Yep. So today, as you mentioned, every company is looking at Gen AI, right? Including all the systems that we use internal, like whether it's Salesforce or Coveo, all of them have their own Gen AI capabilities today. So when we embarked on this whole Gen AI, we looked at, okay, what do the vendors provide themselves? So can we just build on top of it or leverage it as is, right? As opposed to us building everything from scratch, right? Because we knew that was going to take time, right? And we don't have time now in this era. You got to latch onto it right away, right? So we looked at the capabilities. What do the vendors provide? What we can tap into? What are the things we already had built? How can you enhance on top of it? Or what is it that needs to be done completely new? Right. So these were the options that we had. And I think we put a prioritization to say, okay, if a vendor is already going to provide some capability, let's leverage that, right? As is, right? Maybe with some customization. And one of the things when we embarked on SupportLogic was, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted something to be complementary to what we already have. We did not want to start something from scratch, right? And SupportLogic fit in there. And of course, one of the things we definitely wanted was a no obligation contract commitment, right? And which is what SupportLogic really delivered. Thanks, Judith, to you and your team for making that happen. And it was very seamless for us to implement that into our existing ecosystem, right? And I think within 45 days from the time we closed the deal to when our managers had it live for them to use on the data operation, it was just 45 days. That was like amazing that we could get this done so fast. And definitely the SupportLogic team was very, they really partnered so well with us, right? Right from the get-go, once we sold, because we spend a lot of time on the use case much earlier on. It's not that only after the deal was done, we started talking about use case. I think SupportLogic was partnering well with us to understand the use case well in advance. So when we went to the implementation phase, it was much easier for us to get into it instead of trying to figure out that what do we really need to achieve, right? So those were some good learnings that we had on our project. Can be implemented. And of course, we picked an MVP. We do not want to do a full bang at the day one, right? So we identify what is the MVP that we want to accomplish. So the managers see the value out of it, and then you take it next step, right? So we are actually working already, Judy, with your team to enhance the capabilities that we have right now, right? Because managers really find it useful and they want more and more, right? So which is a good thing for us to get that kind of feedback. So definitely see what is in there, see what will complement what you have. Because and the other thing which it was good learning behind, so it was very easy. The ramp up period for somebody to learn that tool was so easy, right? So we didn't have to really spend like an enablement session. We didn't even do anything. We just said, you have this link, go figure it out, right? So so that definitely made a huge difference for the team. Otherwise, it's going to be always difficult to embark on a new tool and train people and make them do it. So this was so natural for them to know. It's pretty obvious. It's my own data. I just need to see how to get the right insights out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. You touched on something, and I am going to highlight it because I think it's important. You know, you have made us a better company by being our customer. You've given us insights and actions for us to take, whether it's, you know, on the predicting and preventing of escalations, or right now, you know, case routing and things. I think one of the strengths, you know, it's in our name, right? SupportLogic. We have some of the best and brightest minds in support. I'm not even including myself in that, although I'm happy to be here. But I think an organization, you know, our CEO, Krishna, was a support engineer, employee number 1 at VMware support in India. Building and you know, knowing how to make tomorrow a better day comes from the people who do the job. And I think that's one of the skills that I'm so happy with this organization, is we speak your language and we understand, you know, what you would want as the leader or your people would want. And I think that really resonates for me, even when I see a lot of these AI companies coming up right now. And I look at the background of the individuals and I think, how do you solve a problem if you've never been around that particular problem? Because I think at the end of the day, support is still very much a people business. And we're making it even better right now in the people side of it. But I think having that focus on, you know, understanding the support business well enough to solve the problems, I think is really, really critical too. So I know we're going to come up on time, and I want to leave a little minute for a question, but I do have one more for you, Geetha. And what right now, and you know, you're you know, such a wonderful executive in our support space. what are you forecasting? What do you think the next 6, 9, 12 months, where are you looking at Gen AI and the impacts that it's going to have on the support world? Like, what's top of mind for you?
I mean, definitely there are a lot of areas that we have looked into. It's definitely a disruptor, so no doubt about it. And we have to get onto that bandwagon. If not done already, people have to get on it right away, right? But I think one of the things we all have to be careful is Gen AI is not a solution for everything, right? There are certain areas where definitely it's going to make a huge impact, which is going to give the best ROI. So I think everybody needs to spend some time to understand what is it that they really need and what is it going to work, how impactful is it going to be, right? Because there are certain things still human is going to be better than any automation, right? So we have to really balance that out. And one of the things when we are embarking on Gen AI, we did kind of a time study, right? We, like you said, you have to be an engineer to really see where you're spending your time today, right? Because any tool you build should support whatever they're doing, right? So we did a detailed time study to talking to several engineers to come up and understand where are they spending the time and only focus on those areas which is going to make the highest impact, right? So I think that has definitely helped us take this, and that is something which I think every company has to do. And other thing, definitely in Gen AI, it's all going to be business driven, right? It's no longer an IT project. They're going to tell you, okay, these are the tools available, go leverage it. No, as a business, I think as a support organization, I need to say, this is where my engineer or my manager is spending time on. And I want to see what automation can do, what Gen AI can do. So it should be business driven as opposed to you waiting for your IT organization to come and tell you, hey, do you want to explore this, right? So, and I think that is something that's going to shift a lot in the next 9 months, and a lot of people will embark on that. And we talked about shift left. So that is, all of these are happening at the same time, which is good because they are all complementing each other. So being more proactive and definitely it's bringing a lot of great opportunities. And the engineers are excited. I know there's always somebody thinking, oh, is it going to have an impact on my job? No, actually it's going to make your job even more interesting and challenging, right? And definitely it opens up a lot of those opportunities.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. My thanks to you and to Ansa and Patabi for being such great business partners to us. I look forward, to the next many months with you and working together. And John, I believe I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to cover this really quickly. I'm hoping we can get at least a quick question in. But, my advice is that companies really need an enterprise-wide strategy for AI. In every department, as this data shows, companies, 24% say there's more than 10 AI pilots going on across the company. 19% say, we don't even know how many AI pilots are going on. So hopefully you're working toward having a strategy that you fit into. It also puts a lot of pressure on support being a leader in leveraging AI and Gen AI to document best practices, identify where your use cases can be used in other departments, making sure the technology you're selecting is going to scale up if it's going to be used by other groups across the enterprise. So try not to stay stuck in your own silo around this topic. And we're all in this together. Your enterprise is all in this together. So that's a quick summary from me. And Vanessa, I know we're tight on time, but hopefully we can sneak in at least one audience question.
You're exactly right, John. I'm going to sneak in one, but I do want everybody to still please ask your questions and put them in the Ask a Question box so we can answer them after the webinar. With that, our question that we're going to ask today actually comes from Anu. And they say, it sounds like this partnership has helped some of your priorities for the year. What are you looking to do now? I think that would be for you, Geetha.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. So, combining with SupportLogic, definitely, as I mentioned, the managers are able to operate better now. But looking at Gen AI, we are trying to see what more can we do, because managers want to get a technical summary of what is going on at the case level. What is an executive summary? What is happening at an account level, right? And at an engineer level, same thing. How can I summarize a case? How can I generate a knowledge-based article faster? How soon can I publish those, right? So we are looking at all these different initiatives along with how do you take things for the different functions within the company, right? Because all this data, like technical summary, executive summary, is something that the entire company can benefit out of, because there are a lot of CSMs who interact with their customers. They want to know what's happening in the support world, because that's where most of the interactions happen, right? So giving them that view keeps it very excellent, instead of them having to parse through multiple cases, trying to reach out to a support engineer to find out what happened. I think those are definitely key areas where both the support will be saving time, at the same time the CSM have a lot of wealth of knowledge that's right at their fingertips when they need it, right? So we have a lot of these cool projects lined up, and I'm sure by the end of the year, many of them will be live, and we're looking forward to all those amazing outcomes from those.
I'd now like to take this time to thank our presenters, John, Judy, and Geetha, for delivering an outstanding session. And thank you to everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's webinar, Build versus Buy, Improving Customer Support Quality with AI Sentiment Analysis, brought to you by TSIA and sponsored by SupportLogic. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Take care, everyone.